Welcome back to patreon.com/the Derrick Lamon Experience, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcasts. We're trying something a little different here. We are going to go video exclusively on Patreon, and audio will be on your free feeds. Video will be released first, and again, that's on Patreon in its normal time slot at 2 p.m. on Saturday afternoons, and then it will go up Monday mornings to your audio podcast place, wherever you decide to listen. Excuse me. Anyway, welcome back. Not too many stories. We're in that summer lull, so there's not much going on in gaming news, but I do have some topics that I do want to cover, some things that came up. Starting with number one, since we are in, technically Madden season, this comes from our friends over at InsiderGaming.com. For nearly 20 years, when it comes to situational football games, there's only one option: EA Sports and Madden NFL. EA has had an exclusive license agreement with the NFL since December of 2004, making the Madden franchise the sole game in town. Sure, there have been other football games since then, but nothing like what was around in the early 2000s when fans had games like NFL Fever and NFL 2K as alternatives to Madden. But now, as the exclusive contract between EA and the NFL gets close to the end of the current agreement, many have been wondering whether that's about to change. Well, don't get too happy, because it's not. The current deal was signed as an extension back in 2020 for $1.5 billion, and it goes to the 2025 season. There is an option to extend it by a year through 2026 if target revenue was hit, and by all estimations, that target has been. Being because, well, they're the only game in town, so you have to understand. So what we're looking at is a contract that expires in 2 years. That 2-year window is the same point in time when EA and the NFL announced the last extension of the Madden license, so where is the current one? Apparently talks are ongoing. Sources have indicated to Insider Gaming that discussions between EA and the NFL have been ongoing regarding the future of the game and its license. It said that talks began later than in the past for a variety of reasons, including concern from the league if remaining exclusive with one company was the best option. The league has been well aware of the public reception to the franchise over the past few years, and one thing they don't like is when the Shield is viewed in any sort of negative light. Well, there's a lot of reasons to view the NFL in a negative light, but I won't discuss them here because this is about video games. Excuse me. That meant there was added pressure from not only within EA to deliver, but from the NFL as well. And Madden 25 is yet to release yet, so we don't know if they delivered on the expectations. After the issues that plagued Madden 23 last year's, Madden 24 was viewed as a, quote, make-or-break game from all aspects. Internally, it wasn't going to just come down to how much money the game made in the initial sales, but how well it did in retaining players throughout the year. The game ultimately, quote, exceeded all expectations in terms of both revenue and player base. Through July of 2024, 11 months after the game's release, Madden 24 remained a top 10 game on both Xbox and PlayStation and weekly average users. While Madden Ultimate Team is a big reason for that, the internal belief is that the game, quote, wasn't good at all, that if the game wasn't good at all, people would have left by then. Sources went as far as to say that Madden 24 was felt by many as a, quote, turning point for the franchise, with the feeling that Madden 25 will kickstart things in a bigger way. The fact that college football is back in the EA suite and we are able to have a college football game, it could lead to a college basketball game, I don't know. But, the fact that college football is back, in my mind, I think that's only going to help Madden. I am playing a Road to Glory right now. I'm having a great time also, by the way, with that. But getting to port my player over to Madden and then take on the NFL, that's an added bonus. So I think that's going to help. How confident is EA? Going back to the contract discussions, many who spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the nature of the subject say that they believe that an agreement on a new contract will come within the next 12 to 18 months. Quote, we have no reason to believe we won't still have the exclusive license, said one source. Another said, quote, at the end of the day, Madden is making more and more money each year for both EA and the NFL. The sales continue to go up, and it would be crazy to not have the deal continue. Of course, there is the idea that Madden's numbers are only what they are because of the exclusive license. Fans who want to play as their favorite NFL team or player really have no other choice if they want a realistic game. This is true. When you're the only game in town, it's hard to, it makes it easier to fuck it up because you don't have any competition. You don't have any reason to push, the boundaries. And I think that's what people are starting to see with NBA 2K. The minute NBA Live wasn't a game that anyone wanted to play, 2K could rest on their laurels because they knew that people were going to play it. Funny thing is, when College Football 25 came out last month, I can't remember the gentleman's name, pretty big streamer though, Ronnie 2K, jumped in his stream and said, "Why aren't you playing 2K?" And he said, "Ronnie, because 2K is fucking ass." I forget what he said after that, and then Ronnie jumped out of the chat. They don't want to hear the truth about that game. They have no competition. If NBA Live was still around and still a really good game, then they would actually have some competition. This Elden Ring gameplay is really cool. I've actually never played Elden Ring because I'm not really a fan of the Souls genre and From Software games, but I don't know. I might have to check this out. Anyway, um, quote, "That's just a choice." I'm sorry, that's just the way it is right now. What do they want us to say? One person with EA said, adding that they don't mean anything negative by it. Every source who spoke was adamant, though, that the developers care about what the players want. They aren't just trying to get by with each game. They're actively doing what they can in the time they have between the releases. Quote, "We honestly do want players to love the game each year," one said. "We know we aren't going to make everyone happy, but our goal with each game is to make it better than the last and have more people enjoy it than the year before. People can believe what they want, but we really do care about the game we are putting out there. As far as the possibility of losing the exclusive rights to allow more simulation games from competitors, I was told, quote, it's not impossible, but there's honestly no way someone else could compete with us for the rest of this generation and possibly into the next one due to the timing of the deal and how long it takes to make a game like this. We're not worried." Neither the NFL nor EA returned multiple requests for official comment on the state of the agreement and negotiations. They are right. We are midway through the generation, this console generation. It's hard to judge because they're still putting games on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Star Wars, EA just put Star Wars Jedi Survivor on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Or it's not on there yet, it's coming within the next couple of weeks or something like that. So it's hard to really judge. We are 4 years into this generation. They should not be making cross-gen games anymore, but unfortunately they still are, and that's something we have to deal with. Everybody wants to blame it on the pandemic and this, that, and the third. We're kind of out of that, but they say COVID is spinning the block. So I mean, I don't know. Who the fuck am I, right? However, um, I don't know. I just think that would it would it be beneficial to have another developer making an NFL licensed simulation game? Yeah, because if they don't, again, they've been able to rest on their laurels because they know they have no competition. When NBA Live was still being produced, 2K went really hard on NBA 2K. And then Live was gone, and they were the only game in town. So they got to fuck up a lot, and nobody called them on it. And now people are to the point where they're like, I just don't want this anymore. If you can't deliver a good experience, they've made it so. I remember when they first debuted, like the whole city thing, and I thought to myself, I have friends and family members who generally play Madden, 2K, Call of Duty on an annual basis and not much more. They may pick up one or two other games here or there, but generally those are the ones. And I remember saying to one of them, they're trying to turn 2K into an RPG, and that's stupid. And they were like, what is an RPG? I'm like, it's a role playing game. I'm like, well, how do you figure that out? I was like, look at this whole city thing and XP, and, it, it just isn't necessary. Now they're in a position where people really hate NBA 2K. I didn't play 2K. I was a live player because I've been playing live since the very first one, NBA Live 95, when I was in junior high. The reason I got into 2K was, I think it was 2000, 2K11, the first one where they had the Jordan Challenge. And I was like, oh, well, I have to play this. And then from that point on, I've been playing 2K. But I actually haven't played the last couple because a lot of the shit pisses me off. Like, the only reason I jumped into the last one is because I'm a huge Kobe fan. Rest in peace to Bean. And I was like, well, I did the Jordan moments. I got to do the Kobe moments as well. So, I don't know. For all intents and purposes, it looks like this deal is more than likely going to get extended. Unless the game is like in a bad state this year and it's just complete dog shit, I don't see this deal not getting extended. I really don't. And like I said earlier, the fact that you have college football out there and you can port your player over to Madden, telling you, I just think that's an added layer right there. That is an added layer right there. So, I mean, we shall see what happens. Speaking of Elden Ring, which you see the Elden Ring gameplay here on screen if you're watching the video version, Um, this comes from PSU.com. Hidetaka Miyazaki, I'm sorry, says a game the size of Elden Ring, quote, really the limit for From Software. Elden Ring was both From Software's biggest game and most successful, and according to studio head Hidetaka Miyazaki, that's also about the limit for what size of the game the studio can make. In an interview with The Guardian, the studio's longtime director confirmed that players shouldn't expect From Software to now make a bigger game than Elden Ring or even games as big as that moving forward. He also spoke about how the studio tries to stay sustainable and make sure that it's not putting all its eggs into one basket on any particular game. Quote, budget, scale, scope, everything has grown to a point where room for failure isn't tolerated as much as I think it was in the past. It 100% is not. And that's because everybody, when people started, when the console war kind of started this, because Sony would have these third person, over the shoulder camera, story, narrative driven, really high and impactful games that some would call movies, cinematic games, walking simulators, etc., etc. So when Sony's putting these games out and they are getting, garnering Game of the Year nominations and things like that, then you have people from, who are just entrenched in their Xbox culture. They're like, these games suck. It's a one and done. While you're playing this, I'll be playing this game that's open world. It's 100 hours and this, that, and the third. So then people started to think that linear games were a bad thing, and that's why everybody's trying to make these huge, big worlds, 100 hours, big ass maps with a bunch of icons and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, there's a such thing as oversaturation. There's far too many of those games, and these studios spend 6, 7, 8 years, incubating these projects. And when they come out and they're not good, and the game fucking fails, then everybody's like, "Well, how did this game fail?" Because you're playing follow the leader. Everybody can't do a game like this, and it doesn't make sense for everybody to do a game like this. Furthermore, From Software has its own way of hedging risks, so to speak, in that most of our projects have a partner who is financing the project. From a business management perspective, we're not betting everything on any single project. Before and after Elden Ring, there's going to be a clear difference. You could see that in Armored Core 6, I would say. Where From Software is right now in terms of scale, I would say Elden Ring is really the limit. We've tapped every resource and talent that we have access to. Scaling it even bigger, I'd have my concerns. Perhaps having multiple projects is the next stage where some of the younger talent can have the opportunity to manage and direct game design for a smaller project. If you thought Elden Ring wasn't big enough, then perhaps this news is disappointing to you, but it's undeniable that Elden Ring was a huge game that took From Software a long time to get out. And what's impressive about Elden Ring isn't exactly its size, but how From Software was able to maintain a high quality bar in the experience the whole way through. Doing that each and every game while increasing the scale and scope of everything would just make it more and more difficult for From Software to keep that high quality bar it's known for. With all that in mind, this is actually exactly the kind of mindset players should be happy to hear from Miyazaki. Quality over quantity always wins out. And this is something I've been trying to tell people for years. There are people who are still arguing about this Drake and Kendrick Lamar thing. It's like, you Kendrick fans are stupid. He gives you out an album once every 5 years. And I'm like, you guys are really young, because in the label era, you only put an album out every 2.5 to 3 years. Why? Because they actually distributed physical media. And the label was not going to keep paying for you to drop an album like that. It just, like, especially if you weren't earning that money back from them. If your sales weren't good, that just wasn't a thing. Now when, we wake up and the album's in our phone, it's a lot different. You couldn't do that back then. If games were not physical, and we're getting to the point where that's going to be a thing, if they decided to go back to, a different style of development where they weren't pouring all this time and effort, well, not effort and time, but trying to pour every single resource and everybody on their staff into making one big ass game that's open world, and then if the game fails, then there's a problem. Like, come on, dude, you got to start looking at this shit. It's chess. It's not fucking checkers. It really isn't. We need to get back to a safe place where every game doesn't have to be something like this to be nominated for Game of the Year. Because we've seen some indie games that aren't huge sprawling experiences that were nominated for Game of the Year. Right? Like, people loved Undertale, people loved Celeste, people loved Dave the Diver. Now they weren't all nominated for Game of the Year, but they were, very, very celebrated titles. It doesn't have to be this huge sprawling map. That's why, like, you can't do that. Everybody can't do that. From Software proved they could, but they don't think that they're going to do it again. You know who else can do that? Rockstar Games. But that's why they're only putting out basically a game a generation at this point. When you roll credits on Red Dead Redemption 2, it's got to be like 30 minutes because it shows you everybody that worked on the game, and that's everybody at every Rockstar studio around the world. And that's the thing that people don't understand. So these big AAA blockbuster experiences like what you see here, Elden Ring, I'm sorry, that's just not like that's not sustainable for one, and it will cause the industry to crash. The gaming industry crashed around the time ET came out in 82 and then they wanted to rush one out for Atari, so at this point I'm only a couple months old. The NES came to the United States in 1985. The game industry, nobody wanted it at first. Like Nintendo had a hard time getting it into toy stores and Walmart and this, that, and the third because of the gaming industry crash. Why? Because people were making really, really shitty games. We are going to see another industry crash if the developers don't scale back. If they don't scale back, I'm telling you, it's 100% bound to happen. But don't listen to Derrick. He don't know shit. In other news, this comes from our good friends over at GameSpot. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 will include Queen's Blood. Yeah, it does nothing for me. I tried to rush through every Queen. People are like, did you get the Platinum? No, because I don't like card games. Like, the only card games you'll catch me playing is Spades with my family over one of my aunt's house or some shit like that. Like, I don't care about card games in games. I really don't. If you're one of those people who spent more time playing Queen's Blood than saving the world in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, definitely not me. Developer Square Enix has some good news for you. Director Naoki Hamaguchi confirmed that the third entry of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy will feature the card minigame. Confirmation spotted by Eurogamer happened during the Otakon anime convention this past weekend, as seen on X, formerly known as Twitter. It's still Twitter to me. Nobody calls it X. Excuse me. The event was holding a panel with Hamaguchi alongside voice actors and producers of the game. An attendee asked the team if it had plans to release a physical version of Queen's Blood, to which Hamaguchi answered that he's received, quote, many requests. Then he added that the team is currently preparing a revamped or even better version of Queen's Blood for the trilogy's next installment. I could do without, just saying. There wasn't any more concrete information about what this new iteration might be like, aside from Hamaguchi saying that he hopes to also be able to share more details in the future. Little is known about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. I think a lot of us expect the title to be Final Fantasy VII Reunion. I think it's going to be Reunion. I could be wrong. A lot of us could be wrong, but Reunion makes the most sense at this point. Although the story seems to be wrapped up, despite Square Enix saying that Rebirth didn't meet sales expectations, the third entry seems to be well underway as for Queen's Blood, while Hamaguchi didn't mention any specific plans for a physical edition. The Final Fantasy VII Remake Materia Hunter board game might scratch that itch in the meantime, once it's back on stock again, that is. Yeah, again, I was not a fan of Queen's Blood, again, because I'm not big on card games. They just don't do anything for me. Not card games and video games. Like I said, I will play spades. I will still bust your ass in some Uno, and stuff like that. But, like, yeah, I don't care. Like, there was the one, the resort, Del Sol or whatever, I forget. You have to play Queen's Blood. You have to win to get, like, this key card that you need. And I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, can this be over already? So, yeah, whatever. I don't know, dude. It just didn't reach me. It didn't reach me. That's the best thing I can say. And I would hope that in the third entry, there would not be certain aspects of the game absolutely tied to Queen's Blood, but I'd be an idiot if I actually believe that, and I know that there will be aspects of the game tied to Queen's Blood, and I will have to complete or win games of Queen's Blood to complete these particular missions within the game. So bring it on, I suppose. I know that I will be looking at a lot of wikis and watching gameplay videos on YouTube to get past it, because I don't remember shit about it. Once I got past it, I was done 100%. So I don't know. We'll see. In other news, great news. Hopefully, we will get some sort of a roadmap for Sony in the remaining years of the PlayStation 5 and heading into the PlayStation 6. I don't know what they're doing over there, but for the other, I don't know what they're doing over at Microsoft either. It seems like Nintendo is the only one who understands where they're going forward, but I don't know. God of War devs' new PlayStation IP sounds like it is taking shape. This is Cory Barlog's game. Remember, Cory stepped down from God of War Ragnarok. I forgot the name of the guy who was the game director for that, but it wasn't Cory. Cory did God of War 2018. He stepped away from God of War Ragnarok to start work on a new IP for Sony Santa Monica. Thank God. Not that I don't want more God of War. Not that I don't want that. Just be very clear about that. We've known for a good chunk of time that God of War developer Sony Santa Monica Studio is working across multiple projects. One is supposedly another God of War game. No surprise there. And then there's a completely new IP, seemingly spearheaded by studio veteran Cory Barlog. It's the latter effort that's currently making headlines as the developer's LinkedIn profile has highlighted the project's existence once again. People going deep diving on LinkedIn to get information is always crazy to me, but whatever, do you. It's been suggested that this new IP will be Santa Monica Studios' next release, and the evident role of a character supervisor makes us think that the game is taking form. Of course, the whole thing's still wrapped up in near total secrecy, but the hope is that it's all going swimmingly behind the scenes. Um, yeah, Ragnarok release November of 22, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, November of 22. So you have to give them time. And where we are, and we just had this conversation, in the landscape of developing AAA games, it's going to take a lot longer than it normally would. Um, and the funny thing is, the new hardware was supposed to shorten the development time, but that's not happening, and that's very strange to me. But I digress. But also, we know that Sony has said there's still 100, million people still on PlayStation 4, so they're not going to abandon that hardware, not right now. As much as we would like them to, but they're just not going to. I do want to see Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica, Sucker Punch, um, um, whoever else, and Insomniac move on to PlayStation 5 games only. Spider-Man 2 is a PS5 game only, and I'm very happy about that. I want to see these developers move on to the current gen hardware. We're still supporting last gen to the point it doesn't feel like the current gen is the current gen. But I digress. Um, mm. It's good to see something else in the fire. I trust Cory Barlog. I wonder what the game is going to be. I would love to see a cinematic trailer or something like that. At some point, Sony's got to pull the curtain back and show us what's going on. They can't keep relying on third-party releases, no matter how strong they are. Of course, we are all waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6. Of course, we are waiting for, I can't think of anything else right now, but we're all waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6. But at the same time, you have to show us a roadmap. Because if they're really going to, trot this PlayStation 5 Pro out there and it's be like, well, what game are you going to show us? But then I think about it when they put out the PS4 Pro and they did the kind of conference / keynote for that, they showed off Mass Effect Andromeda, and from what I'm told, people hated that game. Like, super duper Mass Effect fans hated Andromeda. I played a little bit of it because it was on EA Access. I think there was like a trial or something. Or it was EA Access at that time. It's EA Play now. And I was like, this does nothing for me. And I remember playing the original Mass Effects after the fact. I didn't play them when they came out. And I was like, these really don't do anything for me as well. People seem to love Mass Effect. I don't know. I was doing other stuff when those games were big. But again, not to get off topic, I apologize. Yeah, I do want to see what Sony Santa Monica's working on. I do want to see the new Naughty Dog IP as well. I know that we're going to get The Last of Us Part 3 at some point. Why? Because the story's not done. And we just got the trailer and screenshots from The Last of Us Part 2 Season 2 on HBO. So we know the story's not done. Of course, there's going to be a Last of Us Part 3. I want to see what it is. I want to see what the next God of War entry is as well. But these new IP are extremely important as well, because if the rumors are to be believed as true, we are getting more Uncharted. It's just not going to be done by Naughty Dog. There's another studio that Sony's been kind of incubating, and I'm assuming it's going to be going on over there. I don't know. Maybe Naughty Dog will be in a support capacity. And that's another thing. Um, they're saying that Bungie had nothing to do with the Last of Us online game being shut down, and I don't know how much of that I actually believe. I know that they at least looked at it, but Naughty Dog said we would have to pivot from what we do in order to support this game. That's why you have smaller support studios. That's why you have smaller support studios. I just think that they shut down Deviation Games after acquiring them. You might as well see what they could do. Or maybe you saw what they could do and you didn't think it was well enough and you just said, let's just cut our losses right now. I don't know. But we shall see. I don't know. But if they're in the position where they're now like hiring for character development, don't think you're playing this game next year. You're just not. Like, let's be real with ourselves. We're not playing this next year. I'd be surprised if this wasn't a cross-gen game for the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 6. I would really be surprised. But I don't know. They pivoted like 2018 to 2022, 4 years. It's possible, which would put us at 2026 if but a lot of that was a lot of assets they already had. If this is a whole new project, you can't reuse those assets. So I don't know. We shall see. And then lastly, this is the big one, and I think this is absolutely crazy. And first of all, I want to shout out everybody over at Weapon Wheel. They covered this. Jack moved Johnny. Jack was spitting. Smooth made some very good points as well, and I don't always agree with Smooth's takes, but I think Smooth has been really, really on point over the last, I'd say, 9 months to a year or something like that. Smooth's been really on point, and generally, I find it's not often where I agree with a take where they're talking about a particular topic, and BG has a take that I agree with, and Smooth has a take that I agree with, and Jack has a take that I agree with. I think they all make very, very good points. But anyway, a damning new report claims that Bungie misled Sony about its financial position ahead of its acquisition by PlayStation. The studio's management has come under scrutiny following a second round of mass layoffs within a year that didn't even spare longtime senior executives. Now many former employees are laying the blame solely on CEO Pete Parsons. Remember, Parsons is the one who, when they got, the acquisition by Sony, he essentially took his money and went out bought a bunch of supercars and stuff like that. So a lot of people, when the layoffs come, a lot of people from within Bungie are on Twitter like, fuck you, you had to go out and buy a bunch of classic cars. You could have taken a pay cut. People lost their jobs, this, that, and the third. Anyway, excuse me. Sony spent $3.6 billion acquiring Bungie. Was it worth it? The aforementioned report comes from veteran journalist Stephen Totillo, who spoke to former Bungie employees to get to the bottom of things. At least one of them addressed what many analysts in the gaming community have been left puzzled by: Sony spending $3.6 billion to acquire the studio. The employee reckons that Sony overpaid for Bungie after the studio misled the PlayStation maker by selling, quote, things they were just not able to deliver. While Destiny 2, the final shape, has been widely praised, Totillo has been told that the latest cuts were being planned long before the expansion released. Flat out fucking lied. Y'all knew this shit was coming down the pipeline. There was a lot of spending going on at that studio and living above their means as an employer. That's what this tells me. What's even more interesting is that it seems Bungie was a bit desperate to strike a deal with Sony. One of Totillo's sources that said that if Bungie hadn't been acquired, it may have gone bankrupt. Quote, the alternate history is insolvency, they said. Bungie had thousands of employees at one point, which have now been reduced to 850 following the last round of cuts. The studio hasn't released anything outside of Destiny, its sequel, over the last decade, and has gone through high-profile splits with both Microsoft and Activision in the past. Yeah, people forget that. It's not that long that they asked for their independence from Activision. And people forget that they were a Microsoft studio. They Microsoft acquired them, I think, after they produced Halo. I think the acquisition came after Halo because Halo was such a big deal. It has also emerged that senior Destiny executives Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy have been let go. Suffice to say, the common denominator here is Bungie's management. Well, yeah. Yeah, you look fucking crazy if you're the CEO and you take this money and instead of doing the right thing and fixing the leaks in the house, you go out and buy a bunch of classic supercars. That doesn't make any sense. They knew shit was fucked up. It sounds like they misled Sony. So what? They cooked the books? That's illegal as fuck. Now I'm not saying it's proof that they cooked the books, but based on this, they definitely misled them to believe that their worth was more than what it truly was. So maybe they cooked the books. I don't know. I will tell you this: a lot of good people lost their job at that studio, and it's really damning. And at this point, they the acquisition was because Sony had like 12, I think it was 12 to 14 live service games they were going to put out. And Helldivers and then everything else has flopped. Now, Foam Stars was a Square Enix title. That was their IP, but it was exclusive to PlayStation on console. Um Apparently there was supposed to be a Twisted Metal game, which would make sense why you have the Twisted Metal show on Peacock. That didn't come out. The Last of Us Online did not come out. What else? We were supposed to get a Horizon Universe multiplayer game. We haven't heard anything about that. I don't know. But there were like 12 to 14 games apparently baking in the oven. It was going to be a huge pivot by Sony. Concord is one of them, and that's about to come out. And then again, like we said, Helldivers. So they've hit on one, and they've canceled quite a few. Bungie was brought in to oversee. They were not brought in to be a support studio. They were supposed to look at these games and tell Sony what they thought was, a good idea, if the game looked good, if they would change anything, etc., etc., etc. Bungie might not make it to the next fucking morning, Um, they had to split some people off over to SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment, or they were going to be jobless. They're in a fucked up position right now. And the only way to truly make them solvent is for Sony to, like, you've already acquired them, so you own them, but just they need to be part of PlayStation Studios. Even that alone I thought was ridiculous. I spent $3.6 billion acquiring you, and you say you still want to do third-party multi-platform games? No, I own you. You might want to do it, but I'm going, and I hate to say that because obviously the connotation, but anything that you create because you are a part of Sony Interactive Entertainment and PlayStation, you are now. I would effectively have made them your place. You're part of PlayStation Studios, just like everybody else. Any IP that you create is property of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and you can take all that multi-platform, third-party shit and throw it out the fucking window, because you've lost my trust at this point. I've said this about Microsoft. This is my famous saying with the Activision Blizzard and the ZeniMax Bethesda acquisitions, and then they're like, well, they're going third party, they're putting games on PlayStation and da 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 da. We got to get that money back in blood. I spent $3.6 billion to acquire you. Come to find out, you guys don't know what the fuck you're doing over there. Your management is a fucking crock of shit, and I have nothing to show for it. So, if I was in charge, you're now part of PlayStation Studios. And if you thought you were going to put out a multi-platform game, guess what? You're not going to. Destiny, that's perfectly fine, because you don't want to alienate the fans that are already playing. Everything else, no, sir. No, 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 no. No, sir. Everything else is a PlayStation first-party title from this point on. And that's just the way it's going to be. So, I don't know how they're going to wiggle their way out of this one. Actually, I don't see a way where they wiggle their way out of this one. I don't know, man. I again, Halo Infinite is the first Halo release that I've seen day one. The other ones I was not a part of them because I just didn't play. I literally people were like, why'd you have an Xbox 360? It came to market a year before the PlayStation 3, and I fell in love with the feel of the Xbox 360 controller, and I was already playing my sports titles over there, Madden, NHL, NBA Live, which then became turned to me playing 2K, and then I would pick up other titles over there. My cousin introduced me to the Gears of War franchise, and I thought that was dope. A friend introduced me to Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon because I remember playing Project Gotham Racing. So that's how that happened. But the same thing I said about Microsoft when it came to people, panicking because they were putting games on PlayStation 5, it's like, well, I got to get this money back because I gave you $79 billion. I gave you a blank check and you spent $79 billion on two publishers, and I have to earn that money back. And we had a hit game last year, and the studio got shut down. You like, if it don't make dollars, it don't fucking make sense. And Bungie's not making Sony any money, and you know, some of these studios that are getting shut down aren't making any money, and that's why they're getting shut down. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, that's all for yours truly today. I hope we all like this new format of doing the show. I, for one, think it's pretty cool. But who the fuck am I? I don't know. So again, the Week in Gaming will release on Saturday afternoons at 2 p.m. on Patreon for Patreon subscribers. And then the audio version will release on the free feeds on Monday mornings. And then I'll put out the video version a week later on YouTube so you guys can see. But anyway, that's going to do it for yours truly. I'm going to end this like I end everything else here. Believe in yourself first and foremost, because if you don't believe in yourself, of course, nobody else will believe in you. As always, my name is Derrick Lamon Jackson, and that is my time. Y'all have a good one. Peace out.